On top of the town, it's all about you.
Today on Talk of the Town, brought to you by We Are Centurion TV, we are joined by Reverend Pieter Visser from the Dutch Reformed Church in Wierda Park. He's also a premarital counsellor. We will be answering a couple of questions with regards to that. Thank you for being here today, Pieter.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
And just to assure our viewers, we promise he won't be cancelling any weddings on air today.
I only have, I think, maybe one or two booked.
For the viewers who may not know you, what drew you to premarital counselling in the first place?
That's a good question. I think premarital counseling is, when I started here at Dutch Reformed Wierda Park, I was blessed with a colleague that is very into therapy and into narrative therapy. And I think while we were honing our craft together, we came across a PhD from Koffsies in premarital counseling. And so I think some of my studies was actually built from that stance, because I already did my master's in blended families through Tux, through Gillian Miller, who's a narrative therapist. And then after that, when I studied further, I thought, well, this is not an easy, but it's a more positive framing of therapy, because you don't necessarily with premarital therapy go and delve in all the negative stories. You get to imagine all the positive ones. So that's I think that's how I ended up there, and it was quite a joy doing my studies further in that.
Thank you.
Cool.
Why does premarital counselling matter in the world today?
I think it's something that's very overlooked. I think if you look at couples getting married, they focus a lot on the day of the marriage and not on being married. And I think there's a lot of this stuff, or a lot of unsaid and things that people presuppose about each other. So there's a lot of things that's not said, and they a lot of couples, I think, suppose that their partner just knows this about them. So I think it's a very important way to contract before you get married, in terms of, okay, how are we going to raise our kids? How are we going to handle our finances? What do we think about religion? All that stuff. And I came from Venus, you came from Mars, that type of thing. And how are we going to negotiate a life together? So I think that's a very important few discussions to have before you get married, or for any couple for that matter.
Exactly. Yeah. What is the biggest misconception people have about premarital counselling?
I think, I don't know if they think the therapist is going to talk to them about sex and about money and all that stuff. And one of the things when I did my PhD was to get away from the cookie cutter thing. You can't say, okay, all couples need to look like this, and this is the norm, this is the standard. I remember when CNA was still down below in Centurion Mall, I was walking about in the mall, and I came across a book, Have a New Husband by Friday.
Wow.
And I thought, what are you going to do with the old one? But I think with that, there's it's necessary to talk about what my needs are and what you can expect from me in this relationship. So I think that's important.
Thank you.
Cool.
Be honest. What's the most awkward thing a couple has ever argued about in front of you?
Goodness, this one was a bit sad for me. Instead of that, it was funny. And I actually, with this question, I lied, or I was awake last night in terms of this question because I don't want to expose people. So I'll maybe talk generally. But I think if people argue about the toothpaste thing or the toilet seat or stuff like that, I think you are way past the problem. I think people get caught up in the nitty gritty of stuff, and I think the stuff that's below surface are much more important. So usually with stuff like that, that's like the light on the dash going on. So I think I've evaded your question properly without exposing people, but I think the essence is what's going on underneath the hood. So if people, and I'll say it more explicitly, if people have issues with sex or with money or with a mother-in-law interfering, that's not the real issue. That's just the lights on the dash. We need to go and look at what's underneath the hood, what's going on in the engine, what's in the inner workings and the system of this relationship, and I think that's much more important than all these little things.
Some people say if we love each other, that's enough. What do you say about that?
I think that's a good start and a good foundation. It depends on where that love takes you. It's almost similar to that saying, well, I'll die for my kids, but are you willing to live for your kids? That type of thing. So in terms of if I love you, to what extent am I willing to go in terms of accommodating and in terms of seeing you? I think that's very important. Obviously, that can also be used and flipped on people. Like, but if you love me, you'll do this and this and this, and that's manipulation. But I think, well, there's a reason why the greatest commandment is love, right? So I think that's a good stance. But what do I do with that love? I think in terms of that, I love you, but in order for me to be a good partner, I would need to practice that love in certain ways, and that takes some commitment, and that takes some maybe tweaking some of the stuff that I do and some of the stuff that you do. Because if I love you and this keeps irritating me, I should be able to tell you, listen, this is weird. Where's this coming
Something like
from?
communication is definitely important. Something like how are we going to raise the kids? Do you
Exactly.
want kids?
Yes.
If you don't know the answers to those questions, then love is not going to be enough.
Yeah, then it's not enough. Yeah. So, but that's, I think, where the manipulation comes in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. What are the top 3 issues couples fight about before marriage?
Before marriage, I think that's where the nitty-gritty stuff gets in, and that's if I could put that in Willem Nichols' words, ekkigheid, things that's just about me. So I think self-centeredness, and I know, okay, people plan their weddings from very little or very small. But realizing it's much more than the day. So I think there's a lot of effort and a lot of unnecessary emotion and romanticization going into a wedding day. And a lot of the hard work happens afterwards.
That's one of my questions is,
Yeah.
do people plan more the wedding day
Yes.
instead of the marriage?
Yes, I think so. And yeah, if we put that amount of effort into our relationship, that we plan in terms of, but I want these flowers and this on the table, and the Reverend must say this, but not that. Yeah, then it would look I think, much different. But on the other side, I think people don't know. I think we aren't raised emotionally aware enough, with good reason. I think there's. I wish our country could have the first world problems that other people have. But yeah, so I think it's we're not educated enough in terms of that, and in terms of what's important in terms of relationships.
Thank you.
Cool.
Do you see differences between couples who date long-term versus short-term before marriage?
That's an interesting question. I take the couples usually at side value. And obviously my stance is I'm not the expert of your relationship. You are the expert on your relationship. So my role is more to facilitate and to facilitate a conversation, an open conversation between partners. So in terms of that, a couple could be together for a little while and actually have a strong foundation, or a long while and still bickering about little stuff. So on that note, I think there's some references saying that couples staying together for long before they get married don't necessarily have a bigger success rate getting married, because the relationship changes. So I think even then they need someone to facilitate this transition for them. Yeah.
How important is discussing expectations before the wedding day?
I think, is it in terms of the wedding day itself, or in terms of the relationship?
The
Maybe
relationship,
both.
yeah.
I think it's so important. I think a lot of my work is helping couples find communal language to talk about their relationship. I refer to, and we know the men are from Mars, women are from Venus reference, and I think in a sense that's true. And it's not because men are so weird or whatever. I think it's just because we come from different backgrounds and we have different frames of reference. So it's obvious why aren't we doing it like this?
Exactly.
But I think unpacking some of that stuff. One of the first things that I do with couples is I ask them to bring me a timeline, and it doesn't necessarily matter if something is above or below this. Never can remember which is Y and which is X, but if it's below or above, I would rather look at what's the themes in my story. My stupid example that I always use is if your dog Flaky is hit by a truck and Flaky dies, it can be, the partner can think, okay, well, you were 3. What is the story about Flaky really about? Seriously, come on. But if family plays a huge role in your being, in your identity, then Flaky was family. And then I need to have respect for Flacky's story. And I think people don't see it in that light necessarily, because it was a dog and you were 3, really, get over it. So I think that type of stuff is important to relay to each other. And obviously we take into account that we grow and we become different people. And the other thing is, you don't know yourself at that. Well, I got married at 27 and I didn't know myself. And you grow into the person that you're becoming, and hopefully we grow together. Hopefully we learn from each other, and the relationship changes. So a lot of my work starts from values and negotiating what's the values in our relationship, so that if another pandemic hits us, if you are hit by illness or you lose your job, we are going to negotiate our path forward according to our values rather than instance. And 5-year plans and stuff like that, because we don't know what life is going to throw at us.
Exactly. My mom has this thing that she told me before I got married. We have different cultures that we grow up in. Me and my husband could have grown up in the same houses, both Afrikaans, both in the Reformed Church, both in Sasolburg, both in the same school.
Yes.
But my culture and his culture are different.
Yeah.
And we get together and we have to decide, this is a non-negotiable for me.
Yeah.
That's a non-negotiable for you. And then you compromise and say, but this is how we're going to do it in our house.
Yeah.
Instead of one of the partners saying, okay, but this is what we did in our house, so we're going to do everything this way.
Yeah.
And that's my question. What role does family background play in marriage dynamics?
I think it plays a huge role. You don't only marry that person, you marry the family as well. Whether you want to know it or not. And I think part of that initial negotiating is boundary setting. Is in terms of, okay, what's the role that these people play in my life? Do they have a voice? Where do they sit at our table? And how are we going to negotiate? Because obviously it's your family and you love them. You don't want to throw them away, but you need to shack up together and plan a life together. So how are you going to negotiate that? I was thinking right now when I did at Kurum Deo, I presented the relationship counseling. And in some of the finals that I gave the students, and I learned so much from that, because our country is very diverse and our city is very diverse, and people, including like different cultures together, and how they would negotiate that together. So I learned so much from those exams that I had to examinate in terms of what's possible if people put in the work.
Thank you.
Cool.
What about couples who have different conflict styles?
I think that happens most of the time. In my studies at university, Tux didn't give us much reference to attachment theory. And I think if you go and look that up, it makes so much sense. In terms of, some people feel securely attached, some people are anxiously attached, some people are avoidant attached. It's usually if people didn't show up in their lives, and they have to krap their potjie on their own. So and usually, for some reason, it's the anxious attached and the avoidant attached that gets together. Yeah, that attach. So that's quite interesting, because it's this cat and mouse game. And I think a lot of people, when they get together, they think, oh, this is chemistry. No, it's just your attachment style. And you actually need to look at, how am I going to work with this? Because the thing that, I think it's Elizabeth Gilbert, but it's, who was it? Glennon Doyle, that said, well, there should actually be a kind of an app that all the things that you like about your partner is the stuff that's going to irritate you about them later on. And it's usually the stuff that, according to imago therapy, the stuff that you didn't get in your relationship with your primary caregivers, that you end up looking for in your partner. So I think it's very important to be aware of who you are, and to learn yourself, or to get to know yourself, because that's the stuff that is going to end up irritating you about your partner later on. And how are we going to turn towards each other? How are we going to create a safe space to argue, and a safe space for differences? So I think that's part of the negotiation. That's part of, you need someone to check that out for you and say, okay, how are you going to deal with this? Yeah. Yes.
Here are some hard questions.
Yes. Were
How
those the easy ones?
How important is financial transparency before marriage?
I think there should at least be some type of safety, some type of, okay, I know what I'm getting myself into. And it might be part of that thing that I said earlier. I think a lot of self-preservation, I think, plays a role. I think we need to acknowledge that we live in a broken world as well. And a lot of the times people are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed when they get married, and then life claps you properly. So I would be cautious if I was looking for transparency and I'm being met by, so you don't trust me.
Yeah. Why am I not supposed to trust you?
Yeah, that should be your first red flag, maybe. So, or at least have a very good antenuptial contract in place, because I think relationships and marriages are very vulnerable spaces. That person can make or break you. So in that sense, obviously it's not easy for me to make a blanket statement because couples differ. But I think it's necessary to go in with open eyes.
Yeah, I need to know I'm earning 10,000 Rand per month, you're earning 20,000 Rand per month. So
how are we going to split things?
Yeah.
How's our budget going to look? What do we spend money on? And yes, okay, you might be earning more. What's happening with us? Or at least if this is not an equal partnership, then I know beforehand.
Yeah, and I think it's very important to know that if you are only earning 10,000 Rand and I'm earning 20,000 Rand, are you okay with the fact that I am earning more than you?
Yeah.
I think that's something that doesn't really happen in South Africa a lot. But stuff like, what if you lose your job
Yes.
and I'm the breadwinner? So that's stuff that we need
Definitely.
to discuss.
I think definitely so.
So that's my next question. Should couples discuss debt openly?
I think very much so. And especially going into, if you get married and there's no antenuptial contract, you're immediately married in community of property. So their debt is your debt. So I think those conversations are very necessary to have before a marriage, and to know what you're getting yourself into. Cool.
How do you guide couples through conversations about intimacy?
Okay, so I think with one of the first questions I said, I think some of the presupposed ideas is the counselor will immediately go to sex and money and that type of things. From the stance that I come from, which is narrative therapy, we work with what people give you. So I initially wouldn't I wouldn't necessarily talk about sex or intimacy. Well, intimacy and sex is not necessarily the same thing, right? And money and God, if they don't put it on the table. I think being a minister, obviously, there is a bit of a nuance I think people have when they come see me that, oh, this guy is somewhere going to talk about God. But I would be led by the conversation. But also I give ample opportunity for them to open the conversation about that. Also, I think dependent on what your expertise is. Because my expertise is not in sex. I'm not a sexologist. In terms of, I think there's a few of the younger kids these days that can teach me a few things. And yeah, it depends on what they put on the table.
Thank you. How do past wounds or trauma affect future marriage?
I think together with what I said about attachment styles, because we tend to repeat our stories. We tend to repeat our loops, and we tend to go and seek the things out that I didn't get. So I think that's very important. I think knowing yourself is very important. And unfortunately, I think in a country where we know gender-based violence is a big thing, I think in a country where we should acknowledge that absence of fathers is a big thing. Those are elements that we would need to look at. And if I know that I'm in a relationship, if I know that I'm getting married or just staying together, I owe it to myself and I owe it to my partner, I think, to become the best version of myself. And I think that's love.
Yeah.
That's part of what I give out. So unfortunately, I think we still have some backlash and still have some stigma around therapy, and I'm also fully aware that I think maybe from the stance where I come from, it's a very first world type thing in a sense as well. But I think we owe it to ourselves to go and look at that hurt. And if I've been through that type of ordeals or some type of trauma, be aware that I'm pulling my full self into that relationship. And it's going to have an effect on the relationship.
Here's a deeper question. Have you ever had to advise a couple not to get married?
Yes. No, that's an easy question. I think, in the way that I do that, I wouldn't necessarily say, oh, I don't think you should get married. What I would say is, I see this, this, and this. How are we going to negotiate this? But I've had some ordeals where I said, listen, I see a few things here, and what's your plan? Where, yeah.
It's good to get the conversation going then, and for them to figure out and say, okay, this is something that we can overcome,
Yes.
or we need to discuss it a bit more, or wait, maybe we didn't think it's through.
Yeah, well, it's that and some, I would say, emotional abuse that I've picked up and stuff where I've directly said, well, I see this. Are you going to get out of here, or what's your plan? So I think I owe that to the people that come and see me. Obviously, I make myself vulnerable in the process, because someone can very easily be angry at me. So it's a very, very vulnerable position to be in. So it's better if people come to the conclusions themselves. Yeah. But I think I can obviously, if I don't marry them, they will find someone else to do that. But I also need to live with my conscience. Oh, on that note, I've a national station once wanted to get me to officiate a wedding of a couple that the lady didn't know they are going to get married. So they asked them on TV, will you marry me? And then, oh, we just so happen to have a Reverend here.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think with my studies and stuff, I have too much respect for the institution and for relationships. To just, okay, fine, you are together 7 years, but there's maybe a reason why you're not married yet. So, yeah, let's talk about that.
From a Christian perspective, What is marriage meant to represent?
Good question. And I'm pushing my neck out with this one because it's one of those. I think if we look at biblical marriage, we need to account for how marriage has changed over the years in biblical times as well. I can bore you with the whole history, but if I'm being frank about this, if people say they want to have a biblical marriage, I would ask, okay, which concubine do you want to be? Or do you want to be one of which wives of Abraham? Or what's the story? So I think what we need to account for is how even in biblical times it's changed. And even if we look back there, some of it might look backward to us, but we can see progression. If you look at someone like Paul, that even said, okay, wives, submit to your husbands. Normally they wouldn't have been mentioned even in those times. So even for Paul mentioning women, even though if we look back at it now and say, okay, submit to your husband. So, if I get a couple and the wife would say, just please don't preach out of that part. We should see that as progression and ask, okay, how does our relationships look today? People are getting married for love, for companionship. It's not a transaction to keep the clan safe, like in biblical times. So what we can ask then is what Christian values and what biblical values can we find in the Bible if we're looking at relationships today? And then love, respect, care, those type of things are very important. I think, ironically, some of the first texts about relationships and marriage in Genesis 2 and 3, is the complete opposite of what they had in those biblical times. If you look at it in Afrikaans, if I'm allowed, the text said, daarom sal 'n man sy vader en moeder verlaat en by sy vrou intrek of sy vrou aankleef en hulle twee sal een wees. Now what usually happened there is the wife would leave her family and move in with her husband's family, and she would basically be property.
Yeah.
So hearing that, the script is flipped, and you're hearing, okay, but in our relationships, things should be different. Things should be equal. That's why the rib thing. So I think there's much to say from that, ironically from a very ancient text, but also very progressive in a sense. Hope that satisfies.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and stirs enough.
How important is spiritual alignment in a marriage?
I think I've had some couples that on different spectrums, and they found ways to make it work beautifully. We've had couples that interfaith, and they make it work beautifully. So I think if we take it back to love, respect, I think there's much that we can learn from that.
There's something that I'm specifically thinking about. I know of a couple where the husband believed more Old Testament, church on a Saturday, no pork or seafood,
Yes.
And that kind of stuff. Where the lady was Sunday church, and
Yes.
that really interfered with their relationship.
Yeah.
But like you said, if love is definitely there,
Yes.
then you
So
can
what are we negotiating beforehand? What's my previous colleague, the one that I referenced earlier, said people don't have, sorry, it's makkeliker in Afrikaans, mense het nie beginsels nie, hulle het eindsels.
O ja.
And it's easier to say, okay, what's my non-negotiables? So if I know this is a non-negotiable, maybe there's someone else out there for me. Yeah.
One thing that I'm just thinking of in that situation, how do you raise the kids? Are they going to go to church with dad on a Saturday or to church on Sunday with mum?
Yeah.
Are they going to be allowed to eat pork, or is pork going to be
That
cut
thing,
out of
so
the...
I
it's something small, but...
necessary to and it's good that you raise the thing of kids, because I think adding kids to the mix, it literally adds more noise to whatever is going on. So there's much more for me to negotiate. I have much less energy. I'm overwhelmed, and now I need to negotiate this, not noise, but this things between us as well. There's a book by Rob and Kirsten Bell, The Zimzam of Love, which exactly talks about that in terms of the noise that gets in between partners, or the stuff that we keep laying around that we don't talk about, that keeps building bridges, or no, building walls between us. So in terms of, okay, how much of this clutter can I get rid of? Because the research shows that is that 69% of issues between couples are reoccurring.
Sure.
So what am I doing with that 31? What am I doing with the 31 that I can actually do something about? The rest are going to be there. And we need to communicate about those. We need to, so am I going to add extra stuff for myself? But also, I think in terms of that, if we have that statistic of 69%, then know, okay, we are vulnerable. There's no such thing as a perfect couple. And to realize that we all need to negotiate through these things and life.
My next question follows a bit on what we were talking about. What happens when one partner grows spiritually and the other doesn't?
I think growth overall, because it can be emotionally, spiritually, whatever. That's something that we need to look at very carefully as well. Because if I referenced the Gottman's 69% earlier, one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse for relationships is contempt. So if I think I'm better than you, then that's some of the things that's going to start put cracks in the relationship foundation. So that's something that should be, I think, negotiated with a lot of empathy, maybe, towards someone else. Because if I think I'm better than you, then... and we are obviously not at the same speed. So it could be that I focus on, okay, that's a bit lagging, maybe, in terms of what I see, but maybe I can remind myself of these good qualities. I remember my first wedding sermon that I had to do. I went to Professor Gert Steyn. And I think in that stage, we still had CDs, or he referred to a LP. And he said, well, a lot of times couples like each other and you fall in love with this one track on the LP or on the CD, but you still have the rest of the album. And over time, it might be that you start tolerating some of the other songs, or you start loving some of the other songs. I think we, as I grow maybe away from myself and away from self-centeredness, I think there's some other beautiful things that we see in a partner later on that you didn't realize was there earlier. So I think that's one of the gifts that we get. But I think humility is a huge gift that we can give our partners, and some patience.
Oh, patience and humility, those are very important. Thank you. What role should church community play in a young marriage?
I think that starts from early. It starts from your house, in terms of, how do I love someone else? Am I being loved? How do I feel loved? Because for some people, feeling loved can be overwhelming if they're not used to getting love. I think a church community, in terms of teaching social skills and relationships, can be a huge influence. It could be very detrimental as well. I think in our upbringing is still, I think, very conservative, and I think with that we all sit with a big deal of body shame. That a lot of times that's been spoon-fed to us with Bible stories. So I think we need to look at that and to convey how am I. If we look at Genesis, say, I'm beautifully and wonderfully made, and God said this was good. Of hulle is skaam, hulle was nie skaam nie. I think that's important things to look at. So I think in terms of that, a faith community could be very important in terms of guilt and shame and stuff like that later on, and how I perceive myself. Because those type of things I'm going to convey to other people. If I don't feel good about myself, I'm going to make you feel bad about you.
Unfortunately.
Yes. So I think faith communities has a huge influence in terms of that.
Thank you. What are red flags couples should never ignore?
Okay, I'll there refer to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So they said criticism, that's more like, I'm getting into your character. You're just like your mother. That type of thing. Or do you also always have to be so loud? You can never do anything. Yeah, that breaks down. Contempt, I'm better than you, that type of thing. So if we talked about finances earlier, how we negotiate that, are we comfortable with this, that type of thing, then it's almost on the other side, the flip side, the reaction of those. So it could be stonewalling, and that's this is a non-issue. Oh, what are you talking about? This was just a joke. So it's almost like gaslighting, that type of thing. And and defensiveness. So what happens as well, I think, with that, especially with defensiveness, if I'm being criticized, and men can easily perceive something as critique, and they would react with defensiveness, and the conversation will escalate. So in imago therapy, they talk about blowing your lid. Yeah, so asking, okay, I'm not in my prefrontal cortex right now. The systems are off. I need to maybe excuse myself for 15 minutes, maybe longer. And they've actually did research on that, the Gottmans, saying that, sorry, this is my stuff, this is my food. So they had plakkers and stuff on the couples and say, okay, argue about something that you usually argue about in this type of flat laboratory.
7 Principles of Making
Yes,
a Marriage
yeah,
Work.
exactly.
I love that book.
Such a good book. And they said they had that and measured their stuff, and I think even did like blood tests and stuff, and said, "Oh, sorry, we have technical difficulties. Do you mind going to sit in the foyer? There's some magazines for you to read, that type of thing, and we'll call you back in." And realized that if the couple gets time to cool down, obviously the brain gets switched on again and the communication is much better. And they don't go into the fight or flight or freeze or fawn type reactions. They actually make headway. So I think those 4 things from the Gottmans are very important to look at. They've said with, is it like 98% accuracy if they can say if a couple is going to make it or not, according to those 4 things.
And something that you touched on also has connection with the question that I asked the conflict styles. If I'm the type of conflict style that needs to take a break while we're fighting,
Yes.
and you are not,
Yes.
you're not
Yes.
going to accept it when I say, just give me 5 minutes, I
Yeah.
just need to cool down.
That's
You're going to say, no,
something-
but we need to talk about this
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
I don't want you to go and think about it. So we
Yeah.
need to make sure that
Definitely.
we have sometimes
Definitely.
different
Yeah.
conflict styles,
Yeah.
and how are we going to handle it?
In markotherapy, there talks about the turtle and the hailstorm. The hailstorm is, you need to remember to this, and why is the dishes not done, and have you arranged that, and that type of thing. And the turtle goes, whoop. So I think negotiating that beforehand with each other and saying, listen, I need to talk to you about this. When do you have time for this? Then turtle at least have time to go and write an agenda of talking points that they can get to. Okay, I need to remember to, and there's nothing wrong in that. I think if our goal is love, and if our goal is for this relationship to work, it's not a negotiation. It's not a business deal. Obviously, I can come there with a set of notes and say, okay, I needed to remember to say this. Otherwise, I'm getting flooded. And I don't know if you watch that How I Met Your Mother with Marshall and Lily that has a time out on their fights. I think that's a good idea because it gives you some time to just get back in your body and to get going with the things again. So that's, necessary.
What are green flags that make you think this couple is going to be okay?
Well, obviously, I think the things can be so many. There can be so many things. A green flag would be if there's conflict. Where am I going with this? Am I going to Skinner at the hairdresser about this? Or am I going to turn towards my partner and say, listen, our values are this, and this. I feel we didn't do well in that. And it's also always a we problem, not a, listen, you, that type of thing. So I think that's very important. I think is our we-ness, how are we doing the we. I think if I am interested in what you're doing, and here again the Gottmans say it's the little things, it's the bird talk. Oh, did you see that bird over there? No, I'm busy with my newspaper, or I'm busy with this. So I'm intrigued in terms of what you want to tell me. I think it's the little things, it's the little conversations, it's being comfortable in silence with each other. Think, that I can be comfortable in my body with someone else. That's very important.
Thank you. Is constant chemistry enough to sustain a marriage?
No. I think as I said earlier, I think sometimes we need to get through the mundane sometimes you just have to do the work. The homework has to get done. I'm in the privileged position of doing grade 3 again with my PhD. So it's stuff that needs to happen, and it's stuff that who's going to cook? It has to be done. We have to eat. We have to clean. We have to. It's not always ons sê in Afrikaans maanskyn en rose. I think one of the things that screwed us up so much in relationships is Disney, and I'm a huge Disney nerd, but I think that type of thing is just not sustainable. One of my guilty pleasures was watching The Bachelor or Bachelorette with my wife Janae, but also I used to cringe because I used to think, okay, it can't get any better. How is it going to get better? Well, it's going to get better if they turn towards each other. But you've got all these romantic places and all these romantic things, and life happens. Life isn't always pleasant or romantic. So I think, yeah, chemistry is nie genoeg.
How do you differentiate between normal nerves and serious warning signs?
That's a difficult thing, right? Especially if we talk about trauma. If we talk about what happened in my life, because for some people, having the nerves can be their baseline. And living without that could make them very anxious. So that's why you get people that stir up things, because dinge gaan vir te lank nou te lekker and they need to stir up some action. I think in terms of that, it's part of getting to know yourself. And I think with that, remember as well that contempt could also look like, but I can fix him. Of he's my volgende juwelprojectjie. That type of thing. So no, you're just going to get more irritated with the things. You might see potential, but this is not bargain hunter. So we need to look at self-care, I think, and see, okay, what am I think in the end, it's not about finding the person without the baggage. It's about finding the person with the baggage that I'm willing to carry along. Yeah.
Is there such a thing as arguing the right way?
I think so. I think one of the couples that I saw helped me a lot with this. They differentiated between conflict and fighting. And conflict could be part of, I tell you what my needs are. And I think if it's done with respect, conflict is part of communication. So I think in terms of that, if you, it should be seen in a positive light, especially if we're saying like 69% the conflict is of things are not going to get solved. So we need to sit comfortable in the uncomfortable and renegotiate those things.
Something that comes to mind is people that say, no, we've never even had an argument before. And I think, how does that happen?
Yeah.
One of the two is just too passive.
Exactly. Or they are shrinking.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, how? Yeah.
Some light and relatable questions. What's the funniest disagreement you've mediated?
It gets into, I can't remember a specific thing, but I don't tolerate. I'm way too ongeduldig. So I usually inform them quite quickly. I don't buy tickets to the show. And I don't get caught up in the circle of. So I would, if I see that, I would try and check. Okay, but what's the value not being met under this? But I respect my time too much to go into those type of things. Yeah, so I try and steer clear from that.
Do couples ever shock you with what they haven't talked about?
I have seen some things where I thought, how did you think by making this decision, this is going to turn out wonderful? And usually with those type of things, I just come home and hug my wife. But yeah, I think and it's maybe also a privilege thing, realizing that I've had some opportunities, I've had some things that I could steer clear from, where other people don't necessarily have those tools in their toolkit. So I think in terms of that, it's a very important thing for me to realize, okay, what I take as for granted or obvious or common sense is not obviously common sense for other people. So I learn a lot, and I love learning.
What's one wedding day myth you'd like to bust?
Maybe this. And this is what the coordinator for our wedding helped us with. The people at your wedding are supposed to be your friends. They're supposed to have your best interest at heart. They're not, if they are there to critique, maybe you have the wrong guests. They don't have the picture in their heads that you have. So you can calm down about that. And I think it's such an overwhelming day. So just drink in every moment, just enjoy that, just party along. I think that's one of the wedding myths that I think is an important one. If you have the right people there, they won't be critiquing your table placements and cutlery.
Thank you. If you could give engaged couples one sentence to remember on their honeymoon, what would that be?
I think have fun, explore. You've done some hard work with all this planning. And okay, it could have sounded earlier that I said, okay, it's not the wedding day bad, relationship good, but you've put in a lot of effort, and you've arranged a huge party for all your friends and loved ones, and now's the time for you. So just enjoy that, and just explore together.
Thank you. What advice would you give someone considering marriage but feeling unsure?
We have no guarantees in life. And I think if we keep holding back, you're going to miss out on a lot. I think you can prepare so much. I think the whole idea is to give yourself. It's a huge lesson in humility. It's a huge lesson in sacrificing of the self. At the same rate, it's also becoming the best version of yourself for the other person. So I think if that's in place, maybe asking, maybe that's the thing. Who am I becoming with this person? Maybe that's the question. Okay.
Thank you. What's the biggest predictor of a lasting marriage?
Well, I can tell you what the research says. It's turning towards each other. It's where am I going when life sucks? Am I running away or am I running towards you? I think that's the biggest thing.
What habits should couples start now before the wedding?
Communicating, and do it corny. Do it socially. Have your inside jokes. I help couples with creating metaphors about their relationship, and it's usually so dumb, so simple for everyone else that's outside of that relationship. But if you practice that language, if you get on board with each other, I think that's something that you need to practice early on, because when life is going to hit you and the problems are starting to coming, you're not going to, I always use the example of a sunflower. If our relationship is a sunflower, then the yellow is joy, the seeds are giving, I'm a giving person, the stem can be faith, the other leaves can be family, and I don't know what the roots are. But then I'm not, if things are on and things are hard, I'm not going to say, oh, but our sunflower's head is hanging. That's the type of stuff that we need to practice beforehand. And by the way, it's corny language, it's stupid, but it takes the sting out of the fight. It takes the blaming language out of things. So that's the type of things, that's the Gottmans in practice, without reading them before I did my study.
If a couple can't afford counseling, what can they do?
I think there's lots of places where they can go. I think you get committed therapists. I also want to caution, just because you have a reverend or a pastor, they're not necessarily trained in therapy. So just go and look at the person's credentials. They might know a lot about other stuff, but not necessarily about that. But I think there are a lot of programs in churches that guide that. And I think if you, well, not necessarily just churches, maybe in other spaces as well. I just know the church field. But there are places and people that's willing to work pro bono or willing to work at a reduced rate. The question is also, if you say, okay, but I don't have money for that, but you have a 5,000 Rand wedding cake, at least, then maybe renegotiate the priorities. How long is the cake going to last? Yeah.
Where can people contact you or get help?
Cool. They're welcome to go to my website. It's Pieter J Visser, PIETERJ VISSER.co.za. They're welcome to contact me there. My booking site is on there. Yes, and there's a web form as well. They're welcome to reach me.
Thank you. In one sentence, what makes a marriage thrive?
I think it's the turning towards each other. Yeah, you're not alone.
Thank you. Awesome. As we've heard tonight, a wedding lasts a day, but a marriage is built for a lifetime. Premarital counseling isn't about predicting problems. It's about preparing for partnership. It's about learning how to communicate, how to handle conflict, how to manage finances, family expectations, faith, and most importantly, how to grow together. Thank you to our guests for sharing such honest, practical wisdom with us. And to our viewers, whether you're engaged, dating, married, or simply hopeful for the future, remember that strong marriages don't happen by accident. They build intentionally. From all of us here at Talk of the Town on We Are Centurion TV, thank you for joining the conversation. Until next week, take care of your hearts and each other.